Hello, my sweet and precious students. I'm so delighted to be back. Excellent. We're going to talk today about lesson 62. For those of you following along at home, algebra 1/2 Saxon. I don't want to accidentally shut this off. I've done that twice now. No fun. Okay, so I am on page 198. We're going to talk about example number 1. We are going to be talking about some word problems here. 5/8 of the gnomes who lived in the magic forest had happy faces. 5/8. That means for every 8 gnomes, 5 of them had happy faces. Happy. That means out of 8, there were 3 that had not happy faces. This isn't necessarily relevant to this particular problem, but you're going to start to see that these equations, especially with ratios and proportions and things like that, it's going to be a 3-parter, meaning that there are, instead of having just the 2, for our ratio, we have 3. So not happy, happy, and total. If 840 gnomes had happy faces, that's right here. So if 840 gnomes, and I put it in that column, how many gnomes total lived in the forest? So that's this thing that we're looking for. So if we set that up, we're going to have 5/8 equals 840 over x. 5 happy over total, happy over total. Now, when we have it like this, we can cross multiply. So we end up with this times this, which gives me 5x equals this times this. 840 times 8. So 5x equals 6,720. Okay, and then 5. Now, in this word problem, I didn't have you write a key where it says let x equal whatever, but you need to, so that way at the end, you definitely need to tell me, I don't know what x equals in any of this. So x equals 6,700, and I don't just mean by the number, I mean, what does x stand for? Well, it means the total number of gnomes that are happy in the forest, or that are in the forest, not just happy. So you read the question again, it says if 840 gnomes had happy faces, how many gnomes lived in the magic forest? 6,720 gnomes lived in the forest. Bam, there we go. Let's look at number 2. Example number 2. 2 4/5 times the number of acceptable. On Monday, 2 4/5 times the acceptable number of rock badgers took refuge in the mountain caves. If 640 is the acceptable number, so this times the acceptable number. And we know that 640 equals the acceptable number, right? Because it says if 640 was the acceptable number, okay? Well, if we take 2 4/5 times that, so we've got 2 4/5 times 640. And when we're dealing with fractions, we do this times this is 10 plus that is 14. So we end up with 14 over 5 times 640 over 1. Make my life easier, I'm going to cross cancel, and that becomes a 1. Divide that by 5, I get 1. Divide that by 5, I get 128. So then what I have is 1 times 1 on the bottom, that's fine. 14 times 128 gives me 1,792. So we go back and we look at the question, and it says, how many rock badgers took refuge in the mountain caves? Oh, whoops. Yeah, how many rock badgers took refuge in the caves? 1,792 rock badgers took refuge. All right, let's look at example number 3. For this guy, when the fog lifted, 400 ghosts were spied skulking. 400 skulking near the outskirts. If 240 ghosts were not spied, what fractions of the ghost was not spied? Actually, this is why you should read your question before you start writing things down. So basically we have spied and not spied, right? So there were 400 ghosts spied. So I'll read it through again. When the fog lifted, 400 ghosts were spied skulking near the outskirts. If 240 ghosts were not spied, 240 ghosts not spied. Okay, well, again, this is like a three-parter. Remember back at this first one, it said happy, not happy, and then our total, right? Well, we've got spied, not spied, and then our total, which is 640. Would help if I could add. Got a little excited there. 640 total. God, and it would help if I could spell today. There we go. If 240, okay, so if 240 ghosts were not spied, what fraction of the ghosts was not spied? Remember, fractions are, fraction is part over whole, part over whole. So it said what fraction was not spied. That means we need to do 240 over 640. So we have 240 over 640. So cut those in half, we get 12 over, 32. I don't know why I had to do that, which gives me, cut those in half again. You can get, you get 6 over 16, cut them in half again. Sometimes I just have to keep cutting in half until I get my act together. So I could have gone all the way back here and divided by 8 from the beginning, but I just, sometimes that happens. No problems. Okay, so what fraction? 3/8 of the ghosts were not spied. 3/8 of the ghosts were not spied. All right, so your practice problem is on page 199. It's just one problem, practice A. It says, when the gun sounded, only 2/5 of the racers began to run. 2 out of 5 ran total, which means 3 did not run. 460 racers began to run. That means right here, 460 racers began to run. How many racers were there in all? Which means total. So I didn't even need to do this part up here, but it's just a good habit to get into. Okay, so what we have is 2 over 5 equals 460 over x. We are going to cross multiply. We're going to get 2x equals 460 times 5. So we get 2x equals 2300. Divide by 2, I get x equals 1,150. Let me just double check, make sure. 1,150. We look at the question, it says, if 460 racers began to run, how many racers were there in all? 1,150 total racers. All right, guys, that is it for this lesson. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, great work, and I'll see you in class.